Good morning, everybody. This is Max Farrell from DexFxMarkets.com. Today is the 13th of August, 2020, and in this video, we're going to talk about working with the support and resistance areas on the pairs for the Dex Atomic system. Now, most of you already should know what support and resistance areas are. Now, we don't call them lines, we call them areas because they have an area of acceptance, okay? So what I want to do is that I'm going to grab a rectangle shape here, and I want to show you this. If this green line is the proverbial line in the sand, there's always a little bit area above and a little bit area below. And it's usually parallel. It's usually the same distance. What I like to do is to find something that has kind of broken above that and make it the same length down below. Okay, so if I look at that area as the closes for those two bars, then I see that 71.86 and 71.82, that's about 4 pips. So I'll go 4 pips above and 4 pips below. I can extend this box way out if I want to and kind of keep that as a relative indicator of that level. And look at the coincidences that are here. Well, we have some good shuffling, some rejection, and a little bit of piercing, but mostly rejection within this zone. This is a very strong area to be in. Since there's nothing else above these areas of these deviations, I'm not really worried about it. Now, if I get a single line in there, but look also what happened here when I went 4 pips above and 4 pips below. This particular zone up here is also cut directly in half. Why is that? Why does that coincidence happen? Well, because that's how the market operates. That's how our support and resistance see these. Once you're able to read these zones, now if this is its own particular zone and this is its own particular zone, the middle of this zone, or the outside edge of this zone, is actually the middle of this zone, right? The 50% zone. Now there is also what we refer to as the quarter zone, which is again a half of a half. Is that area. Now up here where there's no pricing to see the resemblance or the relationship, you would have to come down here. Now it doesn't mean that all these are 4 pips apart at that particular time, but if I do come down here and I go to even the middle, or even from here and come down 8 pips, because remember our zone is 4 pips in this particular situation, and if I do something like that, I then begin to see relationship even further into the zone. Okay. Now, I know also that these wider zones from like these big chunks, if I half them, if I bring them straight into the middle, give myself a little carpenter's eye here going on, I can then also see relationship. And once again, if I quarter them, I can also see even more relationship. Now, how many lines are too many lines? Well, if you're in your working zone, you may not have too many lines, but you begin to see these relationships pretty easily. Okay, especially if you're trying to discern what line should I be at, what level should I be at. I usually like to look at the price of where it would be. So when this arrow came out, where would I have gone to? If I tell you that you go back to the first pullback, that would sort of be in this area right here, okay? But that would also be below where your mark is. This would be a high risk trade. So what would I do? I would simply come back up to the next pullback, and I would look for relationship with support and resistance to confirm that. If I didn't have relationship, then I would use the following one, the next one up, for a sell. I would use the next one down for a buy. You find these conditions of relationship for your support and resistance areas to make conditions so you could get into the trade. You're not trying to get into a statement on Nadex just because there's money on it and then validate. If you go to Nadex and a particular zone that's further down into the trade has money on it, and you want to get into a trade and it's validated by that area, don't just get into the trade. That doesn't make sense. What you want is that when the signal comes out, you want to look for the relationship of a zone and the price and the hill, right? The dynamic structure. Okay? So if I come in, I'm simply looking for a statement at this level. That's where I want my statement to be. And why is that? Because we know that everything has pullback. And there are times that you could get into a working order here or here or here, and you may not get pullback. But watch what happens when you do the job correctly. If I do the job correctly here, I may not get bought. I do the job correctly here, and I come back down. I'm putting a working order right at this level. And you see, I may have not gotten bought, because it would have been here. Or would I? Remember, it's about 2 pips away from where the price gets to. Now, on this particular bar, that is 71.66 to 71.65. That's only 1 pip difference. It would have gotten bought right here, and it would have still won. So I may not have gotten picked up on this one, but I got picked up on this one. Now, if I do the same thing here, when this pair came out, the arrow was all the way above. So I come back down to the first pullback. But my first pullback, unfortunately, is right here, which is right at the mean. Okay? And if I utilize the mean inside this zone, this bigger zone, that's right here. So what do? I create some caution, and I come back to the next one. Well, where's the next one from here? The next one from here is down here. And does it get bought? Well, of course it does. Because, one, it came down really close to it, and it probably even went OTM out of the money. So from here, I've gotten bought. Now, I do the same thing on this one here. I look at the previous pullback, which is right here. But again, that kind of makes it very, very close, within a couple of pips. Make that range depending upon your pair that you're using. For an Audi, I like to say 4 or 5 pips away from where the open is, at least. So I would come back and I would look at this one at 71.63, but when it came out, it was 71.62. So I want to pull back. Now, don't make that about, oh, Max says just all go back 4 pips all the time. I try to make it per every single pair. It's a little bit different. If I feel uncomfortable, why not pull back? So where would I go? I would go to the first hill, which is all the way up here. Or I would find a relationship of zone within my support and resistance area, knowing that in between this green line and this green line is the mean. And if I pull a good carpenter's eye here, I could put that line right there, and I could find a pair that fits into that narrative. Or I could find a statement that fits into that narrative. But does it get bought? Well, yes it does. It gets bought right here. And it even goes OTM for a little bit. Comes back in, and it wins. Now, the main problem with most of this is that it's subjective to your perspective. Okay? You make the decision on what area to use and what area to validate. Remember, if you don't get filled on a working order, it's not the end of the world. What you're looking for are those trades that have a high potential pullback, but you're protected by how far you go back yourself. Okay? The other is, there is another good relationship of this system. If you begin to look at the relationship of the arrow, where it's located, within that zone as well. Let me give you an example. If I use a box method of building the relationship here, I'm going to make one big box around this zone. And this zone has very many components to it. It has a mean, and it has 2 quarters. So if this is considered the mean, then this is considered a quarter. And this is considered a quarter. Now, bar the not really great straight lines here, there is a way, I can't remember, I think it's, let me make a line here and see if I, okay, yeah, that's, oh, that's cute. I'm just figuring some things out here myself. Here, just give me 1 second. There it is. That's the bugger. That's what I was looking for. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box back here again. This is a good tip. I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to choose my level there, but I'm going to click on my little line tool. I'm going to choose where I want the level to go to, and I'm going to hold Shift down. Shift will give me a real nice, super straight line, and I'm going to click again. So there's my quarter. Hold Shift again. And there's my other quarter. This is pretty cool. This makes it a whole lot easier. I was always struggling, apparently, with making straight lines, so there we go. All right, so that's the three parts of the relationship with this zone. So my point being is that I may not be able to see a good pullback area. This one would be kind of ridiculous. It's 40 something. It's not 40. It's 1864 to 1839. We know this isn't going to get filled unless there's a major move in the market, like an NFP. So we have to find these relationships of the support and resistance areas. So maybe we could find something like this. Now, don't try to find something that will give you a result in there, because you'll end up getting stuck, okay? Because you are going to have these massive movements. Remember, one thing is true as well, that the price itself, the bars, the relationships, all have relationship with each other. What goes up must come down, what goes down must come up. Now, the more ferocious that it goes up or it goes away or drops down, it's going to try to come back in the opposite direction at one time or another, okay? Because it wants to try to navigate to where it was going originally. Now, in this particular case, we have a trend reversal. But in the zone pattern that I'm trying to teach you, look at where, if this is your box of your zone that you're in right now, and this is considered the mean, when this one fired off, the best area for relationship is this quarter zone right here. That's the statement you would find. Now, you probably wouldn't get filled, okay? But we also can tell later on in advanced stuff that the dropping of the pair could have been picked up as you go. But we don't get into those relationships because we don't know what we don't know yet. I like to pull back to the areas that we know and how to validate. It protects us. We can get into a relationship with a working order, like in this particular arrow, and we pull back. This would be the area of pullback right here at this quarter zone. Oh no, this is at the mean. See, so if I use pullback and I come back to this area, I grab this particular price, and what happens? I get into this statement and it wins. Why? Because it went all the way up and dropped way down into this relationship and picked it up right here. Of course, it even went OTM for a while, and then it came back up and won at the last several bars here. The same thing is true here. I came back, if I came up here, this is where the arrow would have been. It would have been above in my structure. Came back to the area, found the closest relationship, which would have been here, and guess what? It would have gotten filled. That's the true power here, because it dropped all the way down, picked it up, and then took off and went to its thing. Now, the other part of this relationship is that depending on where the arrow is in this box frame, if this is the mean of that box, an arrow above the MA, even if it were to validate, even if it was below the MA, was still above the mean. So could this be something that could be rejected? And this one proved that yes, that's true. Try to find it down where it's below your zone that you choose and into that lower quadrant of the area. This will also help you validate whether or not you should get into this arrow or not, even though that technically it would have been below the MA, as what we say is under. It wouldn't have been in under of the zoned area of resistance. Now, we wouldn't have known at that time what your area of resistance would be. This would be what we'd be really looking at, and maybe even further back. Something like that. Okay. Now, what I like to do is that when I'm making my zone areas, I'm looking for relationships between the two, or over a period of how many bars. And how many bars is that? Usually about 4 hours worth. So even though that this bar, this arrow is within the above the status, it's still below in the quadrant below. So I would use caution here. I would use more caution for pullback than I would being closer to it. Because where is the first pullback from this bar? Well, that would be right here at the money. But that is too close. So this is giving us a little warning here. So I would pull back to here. This would actually put me in a position that I would not be able to get filled on this trade. But it would also protect me, because you don't know what you don't know yet. Let's look at one more example. We'll just pick one randomly. Here's the Great Britain Pound USD. Now this one has many more zones in it, okay? And you can overlap zones, but what I'd like to do is find the biggest ones available, where my time frames are, where my areas are. You might have to change multiple. You may not be able to go back too far. So what I'm going to do is that I know, like, this is a zone up here, right there. I know that this is a zone. There's a couple smaller ones down here now, okay? But this is a pretty good zone right in here, where I'm going to grab my high, okay? And grab my high, and I'm going to grab my low for these areas, for this time period that I'm looking at. I'm going to grab my high, and I'm going to grab my lowest of low, okay, which is right about there, for this particular area. I'm then going to dissect it. I'm going to look at right in the mean, and of course I didn't even use my straightening process. Now I'm going to quarter it out within reason. There you go. And now I can start to see these relationships a little better. So when my price fires off an arrow for me, I know that it's in the lower quadrant of my zone, right? And under the MA. This is a pretty good deal. You see? So this validates that I should be there. So do I need to pull back, you know, all the way back up to here? So this is going to give me a good validation that the marker is actually unfolding. Okay? It's the same thing here. I'm in the upper quadrant above the upper half of my area. So where could I pull back to? I could pull back to the very first mean, which is right here. And I'm going to be using this area right here. Now in this particular one, this one may have not have won, even though that it was set up properly. Here's where the price would have ended. So this would have been a natural loss. But that's okay. You're still following the same rule. When you get a loss, don't try to make it a win by adding in new rules. If you've complied to all the rules, then simply deal with the loss. That's what it comes down to. Okay, here's another example. Now, we can't go back and look at this area here by using this information here, right? So we have to feather our zone if we're doing some back testing. So what I always like try to do is that if I'm looking at this particular arrow here, I go back from here on. So where is that? How do I set that up? I go to my high, and I go to my low of my zone that I want to project. And that's it right there. Then I set up my secondary lines. There's my mean. There's my quarter. And can I use that as a part of the process? Now, when this trade came out, this one's a little bit too close, so where would I go? Either to the mean or to structure, which is right there. Which is, if you look at this is just another part of the, it's like the eighth, all right? So this is a big, huge zone. Okay, so learn how to set your margins there and your areas of support and resistance by using these boxes, because they are very, very powerful. Oops, I deleted there. The boxes are powerful because it kind of takes away all the actions that are around within the process here. So when the arrow comes out, I simply take a box and I look for the lows and highs. Just something like that. I can go back as far as I need. I can always adjust the box later to kind of fit my zone that I'm working with. And this is pretty good. I then dissect the box with some more lines, of course. And I kind of look at what relationships are. So this double green line is a very powerful line because it's telling me it's the mean for my current selection here. Then I can look at, is my arrow below the line, below the mean in that quadrant for relationship? Is a sell below the mean? Is a buy above the mean? Okay. So I hope this helps you. I hope this finds you well. This should really help some of you that are trying to find better areas to grab and how to grab them. And that should really help you discern, good areas of support and resistance while selecting your statement prices over on Nadex. I'm Max Farrell. This has been Dex Fx Markets. I hope you have a great day, and as always, trade well.